The world we were promised was one of endless possibility, a land of prosperity, unity, and unshakable confidence. In the golden glow of the 1950s, American suburbs flourished, cities reached for the sky, and children grew up believing in the American dream. The future seemed bright, and the nation's place at the center of the world felt secure and inevitable. But as we look around today, it's clear that the world we have is not the one we were told to expect. The optimism of the past has faded, replaced by uncertainty and a sense of loss. Once bustling towns now stand quiet, their storefronts shuttered, their streets empty, a stark contrast to the vibrant communities of decades past. For decades, American leadership was seen as the guiding light of the global order. Presidents and diplomats shaped the world stage, forging alliances and setting the rules of engagement. The United States was not just a country, but an idea, one that inspired hope and demanded respect. This leadership justified wars in distant lands, brokered trade deals that spanned continents, and defined a way of life that millions aspired to. Military might, economic power, and cultural influence all combined to create an empire unlike any the world had seen before. But every story, no matter how grand, eventually meets reality. Today, the American empire is fraying, not from a single catastrophic event, but from countless small cuts that have accumulated over generations. The signs are everywhere: faded flags over rusting factories, infrastructure crumbling, and communities left behind. The decline is slow, almost imperceptible at times, but relentless. It is the result of choices made by those in power, elites who prioritize short-term profits and global dominance over the long-term health of the nation. They outsourced jobs, hollowed out entire industries, and left workers to fend for themselves as the economic ground shifted beneath their feet. Factories that once powered the American economy now sit empty, while container ships unload goods made thousands of miles away. The system was rebuilt on debt and cheap foreign labor, creating a fragile prosperity that could not last. American workers, once the backbone of the nation, now find themselves in unemployment lines, struggling to adapt to a world that has moved on without them. Now, the bill for these decisions is coming due. Emerging economies are rising, forging their own alliances and challenging the old order. The world is no longer content to play a supporting role in America's story. New centers of power are emerging, and the balance is shifting in ways that would have been unthinkable just a generation ago. Ironically, the very tools America once used to build its empire, sanctions, tariffs, and the leverage of debt, are now accelerating its decline. Other nations have learned to adapt, to resist, and to retaliate. Economic weapons that once ensured compliance now provoke backlash, and drive new alliances that bypass American influence. The empire is not being conquered by outside forces, but is instead crumbling from within. Bridges decay, neighborhoods are neglected, and the sense of shared purpose that once united the nation is fading. The decline is visible not just in statistics, but in the everyday lives of ordinary Americans. The end of U.S. dominance is not just a matter of perception, it is measurable in economic data, in the flow of global trade, and in the shifting alliances that now define the international landscape. As containers are rerouted and new agreements are signed, the world is moving on, with or without American leadership. Yet, within this unraveling lies a profound opportunity. The challenge before us is not to mourn the end of an era, but to recognize the chance to build something new. If we can learn from the past and embrace change, this transition need not be a catastrophe to be feared, but a moment of renewal. A chance to create a future that is more just, more resilient, and more hopeful than the one we leave behind. For decades, the G7 set the rules for global trade and finance, their decisions shaping billions of lives. But as they celebrated their dominance, a new force was rising. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Tired of a rigged system, these countries pooled their resources and ambitions, forming their own economic bloc. Today, by purchasing power parity, BRICS has already overtaken the G7 in global GDP share. With new members like Saudi Arabia and Egypt, their influence is only growing. The economic center of gravity has shifted east and south. BRICS is building its own institutions, trading in local currencies, and bypassing the US dollar. The era of a small club of Western nations making decisions for the world is ending. A new dawn is breaking, and it's rising in the East and South. The global order is being rewritten before our eyes. Politicians promise tariffs will protect American jobs, but the reality is far different. Tariffs on goods like electric vehicles, especially from China, are meant to shield U.S. industries. Instead, they raise prices for American consumers and slow the transition to cleaner energy. The real reason Chinese EVs are competitive isn't just unfair practices, it's massive strategic investment. The U.S. relied on the market, prioritizing short-term profits over long-term strategy. Tariffs are a band-aid on a crumbling foundation, creating a false sense of security. They invite retaliation, raise costs, and hurt workers and farmers. The winners? A few protected corporations, not the public. Tariffs signal weakness, not strength, a desperate attempt to manage decline. They don't fix the root problems, they make them worse. Real renewal requires strategy, not trade wars. For decades, U.S. sanctions were a powerful tool, cutting off nations from the dollar and global finance, but overuse has backfired, especially against major powers like Russia and China. Instead of submission, sanctions have driven these countries to innovate and build alternatives. Russia, for example, deepened ties with China and India, trading in their own currencies and bypassing the dollar. This de-dollarization is accelerating, with every non-dollar transaction weakening U.S. financial power. Sanctions, meant to isolate, are uniting rivals in building a parallel global system. Other nations, wary of U.S. control, are creating their own payment systems and financial institutions. The attempt to punish has become the catalyst for a multipolar world. The weapon has backfired, and the blowback is reshaping global power. Sanctions no longer isolate, they empower alternatives. The world is building immunity to American pressure. The era of uncontested U.S. financial dominance is ending. The U.S. national debt has reached a level so staggering it almost defies comprehension. Over $30 trillion and climbing higher every second. This number is so large, it's hard to grasp what it really means for our country, our economy, and for every American. The debt clock ticks relentlessly, a constant reminder of obligations that seem impossible to repay. This mountain of debt didn't appear overnight. It's the result of decades of policy choices, repeated tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans and corporations, combined with a relentless appetite for military spending. Year after year, politicians have promised prosperity through lower taxes and a stronger military, but the bill for these promises keeps growing. The idea that tax cuts would somehow pay for themselves has been proven false time and again. Instead of boosting revenue, these cuts have led to ballooning deficits, with the gap between what the government spends and what it collects growing wider every year. The numbers on the deficit graph keep rising, painting a picture of a nation living far beyond its means. To cover this ever-expanding gap, the government borrows money, often from financial elites, big banks, and foreign governments. These lenders are paid back, with interest, using public funds, money that comes from taxpayers like you and me. This borrowing isn't just a technicality, it's a fundamental shift in who benefits from our economic system. In effect, this system creates a massive transfer of wealth from ordinary taxpayers to the already rich. The interest payments on the debt flow upward, enriching those who hold government bonds, while the average American sees little benefit. The gap between the wealthy and everyone else grows wider, fueled by the very structure of our national finances. Meanwhile, when it comes to funding essential services like healthcare, education, or infrastructure, we're told there's simply no money left. The burden of debt is used as an excuse for austerity, cutting programs that benefit the many, while subsidies and tax breaks for the few continue unchecked. Our children's classrooms go underfunded, hospitals become overcrowded, and communities are left to fend for themselves. The consequences of this growing debt are not just abstract numbers on a screen. They make the U.S. economy more vulnerable to shocks and crises. As foreign buyers and investors begin to question the wisdom of financing our deficits, the risk grows that they'll pull back, leaving us exposed. If demand for U.S. Treasury bonds falls, interest rates could spike suddenly. This would make borrowing even more expensive, potentially triggering a financial crisis that could ripple through every corner of the economy, affecting jobs, savings, and the cost of living for millions. The national debt isn't just a number on a balance sheet, it's a symptom of a system that's not working for most Americans. It reflects decades of choices that have prioritized short-term gains for the few over long-term stability for the many. This debt limits our future, constrains our options, and threatens the economic security of generations to come. It's a weight that drags down families, small businesses, and entire communities. The time bomb is ticking. Unless we confront the root causes of this debt and make different choices, the consequences will only grow more severe. The mountain of debt we cannot climb is casting a long shadow over America's future. America's belief in its ability to control global events is deeply rooted, but increasingly out of touch. The post-Cold War era bred a sense of imperial hubris, dictating terms, imposing sanctions, and promoting a single economic model. But this control was always more illusion than reality. And now, it's shattering. Western policies have led to inequality and instability, not shared prosperity. The rise of BRICS is a rejection of the one-size-fits-all model. The war in Ukraine exposed the limits of Western power. Much of the world refused to join sanctions. The world is no longer taking orders from the West. Doubling down on failed policies only accelerates decline. The US is now one major power among several, not the sole agenda setter. Clinging to the illusion of control only deepens isolation. Our economic problems, inequality, stagnant wages, lack of opportunity, aren't accidents. They're the result of a system designed to benefit a tiny elite. Employers maximize profit by paying workers as little as possible, creating a fundamental conflict. For decades, power has shifted to employers. Unions weakened, jobs offshored, technology used for control. Productivity soared, but wages stagnated. Wealth is captured by CEOs and shareholders. This isn't a market failure, it's a market success for the elite. The system blocks progress on climate, healthcare, and wages because powerful interests profit from the status quo. Public good is sacrificed for private gain. Until we confront the undemocratic nature of capitalism, we'll keep treating symptoms, not the disease. Real change means challenging the system itself. The multipolar world isn't coming, it's already here. The era of a single superpower is over. Now, multiple centers of influence shape global affairs. The US is still powerful, but it's one pole among many: China, Russia, India, and the EU. Alliances are fluid, interests complex, and old hierarchies are fading. Institutions like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization reflect this new order. These aren't anti-Western, but non-Western, spaces for independent policy and development. They're building their own systems, declaring independence from the old order. The West must adapt, shifting from dominance to partnership. The multipolar world demands shared responsibility and negotiated solutions. The sooner we accept this, the better we'll navigate the future. The evidence is clear. US and G7 dominance, once considered unshakable, is now visibly eroding. The world is witnessing a profound transformation, as the policies and decisions made by Western powers in recent decades have, in many ways, hastened their own decline. Economic missteps, political polarization, and a reluctance to adapt to new realities have all contributed to this shift. Instead of strengthening their position, these self-defeating strategies have only accelerated the pace of change, leaving the West at a critical juncture. The rise of BRICS and the emergence of a truly multipolar world are not temporary fluctuations or passing trends. They represent a fundamental rebalancing of global power, as new alliances and economic centers take shape. The influence of countries like China, India, Brazil, Russia, and South Africa is growing, and their cooperation is reshaping the international order in ways that cannot be ignored or reversed. The West now stands at a historic crossroads. It can choose to deny this new reality, clinging to outdated notions of supremacy and doubling down on aggressive tactics. Or it can choose to adapt, renew, and find a constructive role in the changing world. This moment demands honest reflection and bold decisions. If Western nations continue to cling to the myth of unipolar dominance, the consequences will be dire. Instability will deepen, societies will fragment, and the risk of catastrophic conflict will only grow. The refusal to accept change can lead to social unrest, economic stagnation, and a dangerous spiral of confrontation both at home and abroad. But there's another path. By recognizing the new global reality, Western countries can focus on solving their own domestic challenges, investing in education, healthcare, and infrastructure, and democratizing their economies to ensure prosperity is shared more broadly. This approach would not only strengthen their societies from within, but also restore credibility and trust on the world stage. A more equitable, just, and confident America could become a valued partner in a multipolar world, working alongside others to address global challenges rather than trying to dominate them. True leadership now means cooperation, humility, and a willingness to learn from others. The world is moving forward, with or without the West. High-speed development, new trade routes, and innovative partnerships are already reshaping the global economy. The pace of change is relentless, and those who hesitate risk being left behind. De-dollarization and the formation of new trade blocs are not just possibilities, they are realities unfolding right now. International commerce is adapting, with new currencies and payment systems challenging the old order. Whether the West chooses to engage or not, these changes will continue. The era of the American empire is drawing to a close. The only real question that remains is how this transition will unfold. Will it be managed with wisdom and foresight, or will it end in chaos and decline? Ultimately, the choice is ours. We can face the future with courage, manage the decline responsibly, and build a more just and sustainable society. Or, we can crash in a desperate attempt to preserve a lost status quo, risking everything in the process. The crossroads is here. What path will we choose?